Are your eyes prepared? Well, here at Games Workshop, ours are, because we have just revealed our new roadmap for the year. And I'm sure you'll agree, there's some surprises in there. We have 9 dozen new Space Marine chapters coming out all in the next 12 months. It's a whole year of problematic insignias and questionable gimmicks. We can't wait to introduce you to our new flagship chapter, the Rage Angels. An order of mysterious warrior monks who are cursed to seek only victory on the battlefield, no matter the cost. That's not enough, we have plenty of new, unique chapters on their way. We have religious knights who have sworn to seek only victory on the battlefield, no matter the cost. We have doctrinal strongmen who revere an ancient text that instructs them to seek only victory on the battlefield, no matter the cost. We have an order of mysterious marines with hidden secrets that compel them to seek only victory on the battlefield, no matter the cost. We have space vampire... No, wait, hold on, we've done that already. Werewolf marine... No, did that too. What, Marines from the Black Lagoon. Yeah, that'll do. They also seek only victory in the battlefield, no matter the cost. And just wait until you see what's up after that. Your only hint is that you should get ready to seek only victory on the battlefield, no matter the cost. So if you love Warhammer, you have to love this. What's an Eldar? Hi everyone, my name is Discourse, and today we're going to talk about why you should expect a lot more Space Marines in your future. So there's a little bit of a gnashing of teeth regarding the new Codex roadmap. This shows all of the upcoming releases for 2021, and many people have started to talk about how Games Workshop produce a lot of Space Marines. I mean, a lot of Space Marines, and not much else. And this seems to have been met with equal parts dismay and disbelief. Another year of Space Marines? Great. But this is hardly new. Games Workshop have always prized Space Marines above any other faction. Just go on the GW website and see for yourself. They have their very own faction area. In fact, they have about as many sub-factions as the armies of the Imperium and the armies of Chaos put together. I mean, even as a young kid, I could tell that popping the word Chaos in front of Space Marines was a very lazy way of selling your bad guys. But people just can't get enough Space Marines. Which is why in 2021, I'm surprised to hear that people are still sort of annoyed about the fact that for every 2 releases of other factions, there's at least 1 major wave of new Space Marine models. People are still talking about this? So maybe this is a sign to Games Workshop that the community have been overloaded with Space Marines, right? Wrong! Get ready for more! Games Workshop are going to shovel as much Space Marines as you can possibly fit in your mouth, and then some more. You are going to choke to death on Space Marines if Games Workshop have their way. Okay, maybe that was a bit much. But I'll tell you what surprises me. When people are surprised that Space Marines are still getting the focus, I'm surprised. I'm surprised at the surprise. Or is it just the case that people are resigned to it now? So Space Marines were first introduced in Warhammer in the very first edition in Rogue Trader. This was all the way back in the 80s. And they were originally written to be brutish, deluded fanatics who were the armored fist of a cruel and evil empire. Since then, Games Workshop have sort of willfully misinterpreted the characters. They were never intended to be the heroes of the setting. The Space Marines that we see today have undergone a long and ghoulish process of sanitization. And the sad truth is, they underwent this transformation because they're the golden child of the 40k family. Well, at least according to Games Workshop's profit margins, suffering from success. Because Space Marines were not accidentally transformed by Games Workshop from dumb repressive goons into enlightened warrior monks. They were purposefully turned into a product that was palatable enough that they could sell to kids. Ultimately, Space Marines are a product sold by a business, and they make money, and all Games Workshop care about is money. So let's drill down on this a little bit deeper. Games Workshop are a publicly traded company, and they count themselves amongst other very responsible recreational companies like Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, Raytheon. And as a publicly traded company, they are legally obligated to provide value for their shareholders. And that means they need to drive their profit as high as possible in order to maintain their stock price. So if Space Marines sell the best, then they're sort of legally obligated to sell Space Marines, and to focus on Space Marines to the detriment of all other factions. And well, to the detriment of Space Marines too, considering all the redundant units they have in their roster. Though that does have the happy upside of filling codices. And supplements, of course. Can't forget about those. Wow, Games Workshop really always find an excuse to reach into your pocket again, don't they? Now, it's a bit of a myth that companies need to maximize profit to the exclusion of all else. For example, Facebook have a caveat that they may sacrifice profit in service of social purpose. Yeah, we can see how well that worked out. And it's actually a little bit more complicated than just simply saying that all publicly traded companies need to squeeze their consumers for as much profit as possible. And just leave it there, because it's a little bit more complicated than that. Shareholder value, for example, is a very vague term, and it's sort of a contradictory goal considering that different shareholders are going to have different objectives. Some will be holding stock for the long haul, others will be looking for short-term gains, and then the sort of values that a company should in theory be generating shouldn't be short-term oriented. They should be for the long term. You know, it can't just be for a quick buck, in theory. Because this is all a little pedantic, because they've already shown us what they think shareholder value is. And it's more money by selling more Space Marines. Now, with private companies, you might have shareholders invested in that company, not only in terms of money, but in time and effort as well. And they might have a stake in holding directors personally accountable. But for a huge publicly traded company like Games Workshop, it's becoming increasingly hard to refer to Games Workshop as a niche company, especially considering that post-Brexit Britain is going to be relying on tiny miniature men as their largest export. Most of the shareholders are either individuals who simply can't hold the company to account, or massive pension funds who don't care about the day-to-day running of the business. All legislation regarding the running of public companies is written under this mad assumption that shareholders will hold companies accountable for their actions. And this is a big problem because it's just not true in practice. So without legislation that scrutinizes large public companies or activist shareholders that zoom in from the warp, Games Workshop are going to keep taking the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is, I'm afraid to say, a future made up of endlessly problematically coded, multicolored spacemen. Bring back the Rainbow Warriors, GW. It seems that Gilliman will be overseeing a damn good time as the Imperial Regent. And while Games Workshop continue to rake in cash from the sales of Space Marine, why do you think they would make anything else? Where's the incentive? I mean, sure, Space Marines need a foil to play against, but other factions only exist insofar as they can be destroyed by the main faction. Xenos, Chaos, they're all defined by their relationship to the Space Marines. This is why we see very infrequent updates to the Xenos factions when compared with Space Marines. We're working with what, 10-year-old models now for Dark Eldar? They're beautiful sculpts and they look damn impressive in 2010, but come on. Now there's a lot of assumptions that go into Games Workshop's business model. Like, who's to say that other factions couldn't be as popular as Space Marines if they were just given the time and effort? If we put Eldar in the front of every single starter box, maybe they would sell as well as Space Marines. Maybe they could rake in the cash. Unfortunately, we'll never know because Games Workshop don't really care to find out, because they're not a very innovative company when it comes to these sorts of things. The endless releases of Space Marines is the result of a dearth of creativity and executive laziness. Maybe instead of putting all their creative energy into working out how to exploit their player base in new, interesting and predatory ways, they should instead put some of that energy into how to sell more diverse models. And so, this laziness impacts the paradigm of Warhammer 40k. Every other faction come to be defined against the Space Marine. What should be an elite, very small army becomes the main guys. All other stats are compared to Space Marines. How can we know ourselves except in reference to giant muscle men? Genuine question. Doesn't everyone else just constantly compare themselves to Jeff Capes, the 1983 world's strongest man? Just me? And so this is why we have seen Games Workshop really expand into different Space Marine chapters, because people for some reason are really enamored with big metal strongmen. Time that could be spent building up the fiction of other races and interesting societies in the galaxy goes into explaining why this color of Space Marine is better at arm wrestling than that other color of Space Marine. Hell, the last 10 years of lore have basically been one big Thermian argument as to why you should rebuy all your Space Marine models with longer, sexier legs. That's scaling though. I suspect that Games Workshop probably perceived the failure of Warhammer Fantasy was the lack of a similar Space Marine equivalent for brand recognition and attracting new, younger hobbyists. Bretonnian Knights just weren't cutting it. Gone but not forgotten, my followers of the Grail. And the forces of the Reichsland just weren't epic enough for profit. So they killed the world of fantasy and deep struck stroked some fantasy space marines right onto our tables. And it worked! Age of Sigmar is far more profitable and successful than Warhammer Fantasy ever was. Although there is a delicious irony in Total War Warhammer kickstarting a renaissance of Warhammer Fantasy just as it was killed. Looking forward to square bases again. I mean, how long until we see some supplemental battle tomes for Stormhost Chambers? Have they already done it? Tell me in the comments if they have. So what is it about nameless, faceless, superhuman giants clad in oversized pauldrons and with the emotional maturity and intellectual prowess of a 14-year-old child that appeals to the mass market? I think there's actually a video in that. But regardless, super strong tough guys in heavy armor seem to have some form of timeless appeal, and they make for a good poster boy. But look, I don't want this video to feel like an attack on people who play Space Marines. I'm personally not a fan. I mean, I think they're fine, I just don't collect them. In fact, I'd probably go so far as to say that they're one of the least interesting factions to me. But they are very popular. They appeal to a lot of people. But that shouldn't excuse Games Workshop's unhealthy obsession. I think it's very narrow-minded of Games Workshop to focus so much on Space Marines. They have a lot of great, really interesting factions in Warhammer 40k. Maybe too many, in fact. But they're incentivized to just keep making Space Marines in the most basic way. And that really says it all when it comes to the corporate strategy of Games Workshop. Bzz, Space Marines equal money, therefore more Space Marines. Very astute business plan there, GW. But I don't want this video to appear like an attack on Space Marine players. Ultimately, the faction that we play is a subjective experience and just a matter of taste. Not everyone is really into tie-dye, for example. They're wrong, but they're not into it. So we've gone over the legal obligations of Games Workshop and their corporate strategy, but the real question is, should we expect any better? But as someone who collects Beasts of Chaos and Dark Eldar, I think we should. Seriously, if McCarthy was around today, he'd be looking in the direction of Beastman players. And I would argue that the reliance on Space Marines actively does harm to the game and the player base. I mean, you can really tell how excited people are for the recent Primaris Captain reveal. That is to say, people are not excited at all. Ultimately, there's only so many times you can tease something new and exciting and then reveal just another of the same faction again. So for everyone out there who wants less Space Marines, well, I'm not sure there's any way to achieve that. At least within the same structure that Games Workshop operate in right now. Well, I guess you could try and worm your way into the executive level of Games Workshop, start getting your own toy fan fiction inserted into codices, inspire an all new generation to join the toy empire. I mean, that would be for the greater good of the hobby. And maybe, as the hobby grows to be more inclusive, we'll see a wider selection of models get the focus, especially as the broad demographic of the game grows out beyond the 14-year-old boy and the 14-year-old anyone. Could that disrupt the Space Marine equals money algorithm? I mean, certainly the demographics of the game have changed. And you can tell because Sisters of Battle are far more popular than they ever were. Back when I first started, with my very first army being Sisters of Battle, those warrior nuns were not very visible at all. Now you could argue that that was because all the models were made out of metal and they were monopose, and they were a fairly hostile faction to play with tricky faith mechanics. Not a great combination for new players, and I quickly moved on to Imperial Guard. But I would argue that it also has a lot to do with the fact that the hobby is far more diverse in 2021, especially when compared to the early 2000s. And that's for the better, by the way, because maybe Sisters of Battle will become the mono army that's printed out again and 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 again. I sure hate how Games Workshop are incentivized to keep striking at the exact same vein over and over again. I mean, if it wasn't Space Marines, it would just be some other faction to the detriment of all others. They're always going to focus on one faction if they're the most popular, because it's the most obvious path to making money. Games Workshop just aren't creative enough to do otherwise. At least, that's what they've shown so far. To GW, this isn't a game, it's a business. If Space Marines sell, they're gonna make more Space Marines. Hey, maybe we'll get Space Given this year. That would be neat. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. This was a bit of a weird one. I try not to talk about Space Marines if I can help it. I imagine people won't be pleased with this at all. So a heartfelt thanks to the 4 Space Marine players that stuck around to the very end. And hey, remember, you outnumber the rest of us. And let it be known that I too was once caught up in the hype of Space Marines when I first started Warhammer 40k many moons ago. Best Marines were very cool in Dawn of War, what can I say? Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more of this type of content, just subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell button, it will notify you when my next polemic rant is coming out. And I'll see you all next time. Bye bye! Seriously though, they have done Vampire Space Marines, Werewolf Space Marines, Thousand Suns are basically mummy Space Marines. What is it about classic movie monsters that Games Workshop just have to base Space Marines on them? Bring on the creature from the Black Lagoon Marines? Invisible Marines? They should totally do a Vincent Price themed captain. That is a Space Marine I'd love to see.